We are live with Mississippi Votes. But make sure I got it right. Arekia,
Yeah.
like Tamika, but Arekia
Yep.
Bennett. And she's going to give us a little bit of a background about Mississippi Votes and what all they do.
Cool. So my name's Arekia. I am the executive director at Mississippi Votes. I just found out we were the only Mississippi Votes is the only youth-led youth civic engagement organization in the South. So that's cool. But yeah, so I get to work with young people every day and get them integrated and interested in the electoral process, the voting process, and just civically engaged all around. We started in 2017 as a project, a thesis, if you will, that college students were doing at the University of Mississippi and Mississippi State University and Jackson State. And so it was, we tested to see how many people there were who were eligible voters in the state of Mississippi, but unregistered. We found out that there were over 300,000 eligible unregistered voters across the state. But what was more striking for us was that many of them were young folks, Black folks, poor folks, and people just really what Bell Hooks calls living on the margins, right? Of what it means to be marginalized in this state. And we wanted to create an infrastructure where we were building up an ecosystem of leadership, educating young people on the electoral process, and getting down into community and having real life conversations, making all of this voting stuff make sense to people who are not even thinking about this and how it affects their day-to-day lives. So yeah, that's what we've been up to. Since 2018, I became executive director, and we've registered somewhat over 15,000 new voters this year. Even in the middle of a global health crisis, we've registered somewhere between 1,200 new voters. So I'm really excited about having a team full of young people who really, one, love Mississippi and
Mm.
want to see us progress in a way that, you know, we know in our hearts our state is capable of progressing. So that's who we are.
That's really, really awesome. So it started out as a thesis, just young people just getting together and
It was homework, yeah. Yeah. So many of the students who started were already organizing on their college campuses. I came in on the tail end of 2017. I had just finished working on a mayoral campaign and had just started a Black feminist collective at JSU and was trying to figure out, like, okay, are we going to law school, Rika? I don't know. So I met the founder of the organization, and she and I shared so much, so much in common about our love for our state and the need for the country to take notice of what has been and is and always has been happening in Mississippi in terms of the organizing climate and the electoral justice work that's been happening and the Black women leading it. So we wanted to make sure that young people, young Black and brown people, were front and center of the stories that get told about what we're doing in Mississippi.
awesome, awesome. When it comes to the state and our history with voting, you got the especially when it comes to Black women, the Fannie Lou Hamers and Myrlie Evers and those type of people that have stood up for us. When I use the term like vote like a Black woman, to you, what does that mean?
Yeah, that means vote for your community, right? Vote for the best interest of your children, for the folks that we feed on the weekends, right? Black women have so, if nothing else, COVID has exposed to me the reality of the role of Black women in our community. Black women have so fed my community. They have watched each other's children.
Right.
Just have so many roles, and so voting like a Black woman means voting like everything attached to you depends on what you do at the polls, because it does.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of Black women, you could kind of hear like my mother and my child in the same, like two Black women. in the same space right now behind me. But it is exactly like you said about the community. I think a lot about us and how we do at repasses and bringing all the food out to the people and just feeding the folks in the community, the local kids. So, and we have had a history because a lot of it, we have not, though women were allowed to vote, white women were the ones that were really voting. So the struggle, as you know, for black women wasn't always there, wasn't always there. We didn't always have that right.
Right. It's always been an uphill battle. And I think about a lot of people have been celebrating this year as the 100th year commemoration of women's suffrage and women's right to vote, right? But we can't have that conversation fully without recognizing what you just said. Um, and what's striking is that people tend to forget that the women who were on the front lines, who got moved to the back of the line, were Black women, were sisters, were women of Delta Sigma Theta, were all kind of sorority girls, were beacons, doing all kinds of things in their community already. And I'm studying women, gender, and leadership at the University of Massachusetts online, and one of the lessons a couple of weeks ago actually was about liberalism and white feminism and the differences between that and Black feminist theory. And I'm just like, the difference is clear. Black women have always been inclusive in our movements and have always been part of the next level of thinking, right? And I think I could go on and on about that. I don't want to get into too much trouble about the pussy hats and the however much percent of white women who do the wrong thing. But it's just like, Black women have voted for community and voted for our people and stood in the gaps so many times that, like, from Alabama to Mississippi, you can see that Black women, that segment of the electorate is almost always the most consistent and most reliable to showing up for our people. So
Yeah, voting block, especially most consistent voting block. Black women have consistently, in a sense, saved America from itself when it came to Doug Jones and that pedophile. Like, really, that's what we're doing. Yeah, so and then also one of the things that has been, I feel like you and I could talk about this, of course, important within our community is it seemed like, the angry Black woman. But to be angry is like we got a reason to be angry because we have carried this country, and in a lot of ways we are not even considered fully American. Because I remember once I was talking to a friend of mine and who was white, and it's like I want to love America like a white man, but America has not treated me like one. So I just, yeah, that's a big exhale. Okay, well, great. Well, you did mention a ballot initiative that I wanted to talk to you about that was like not really discussed much. Of course, we know 65 and 65A, the whole thing about medical marijuana. You vote 65 if you're pro medical marijuana, not 65A. And the other part was, I think, Amendment 47. Are you familiar with Amendment 47?
So among the Jim Crow provisions in Mississippi's 1890 Constitution is a two-tiered election requirement for candidates for statewide office, which requires candidates to win both the popular vote and the majority vote, right? In the House of Representatives, in the Mississippi's House of Representatives. Under the current law, when a candidate does not win both the popular vote and the majority of House districts, the outcome of the race is determined by the Mississippi House of Representatives. So technically, we have our own version of an electoral college, right? So basically, the intention of the people who made these provisions was to protect white political power in the state and disenfranchise you and me. Yeah. The legislature overwhelmingly this cycle passed House Concurrent Resolution 47 during the 2020 legislative session, which will allow voters to vote to remove the two-tiered system from Mississippi's constitution and allow statewide elections to be settled based on the popular vote. So by voting yes, you are voting to remove this Jim Crow era type rule or law, and give really power back to the people. So voting no means that we continue to allow, things like what happened to Hester McCrae to happen in the with legislative control.
Okay. Well, I would just like to thank you so much for taking some time out to speak with us. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Go vote November 3rd, 7 to 7, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. If you're in line at 6:59, they cannot turn you around. If you need information about what's on the ballot, or you confused about something, holla at us at MS Votes. Use the election protection hotline, One Voice of Mississippi. Shout out to Nashambi. They do a wonderful job at answering the election protection hotline. So call 1-888-601-VOTE. I think it's 1-888-601-8683.
Thank you so much, sister, for all that you do in the community, for your bright light and how you shine. And I'm just so glad to be able to talk to you, and I'm giving you a hug.
Hugs back to you. Thank you for all that you do, and holla at me if you need anything.
Will do.
All right.